Former President Barack Obama made a surprise stop in Texas. What his appearance might mean for Democrats headed into the midterms today on the Texas Standard.
Texas Standard is a production of KUT Austin, KERA North Texas, Houston Public Media, and Texas Public Radio in San Antonio.
I'm Laura Rice. The number of students in Texas public schools dropped by tens of thousands at the beginning of this school year. We'll look into why. Plus, another Texas-based company is also now making Texas its legal home. What we can make of this growing trend. Texas Monthly senior editor Aaron Parsley's young nephew was killed in the devastating July 4th flooding. His essay about his family's experiences just won a Pulitzer Prize. And getting ready for the World Cup in Houston means taking really good care of some grass. Those stories and more today on the Texas Standard. We'll get up to a high of 96 today in Lubbock, 88 in College Station, about the same in Nacogdoches, and 91 in Austin. It's the Texas Standard for Wednesday, May 13th. I'm Laura Rice. And it's the time of year when college campuses in those cities listed above and elsewhere across the state begin to clear out. Traffic lightens, there's more parking, and there's less wait time at the nearby restaurants students frequent. But there was some pop-up buzz near UT yesterday when a certain high-profile patron made an entrance at a local restaurant called Taco Joint. Former President Barack Obama stopped in not just for a couple of street tacos and one with mole, but for a photo op and meet and greet with the two Democrats at the top of the ticket in November's election. Obama didn't say the words "I endorse" about Senate candidate James Tallarico or gubernatorial hopeful Gina Hinojosa, but he reminded taco eaters to vote. So what can we make of the visit? Well, it comes as President Trump has yet to pick a favorite in the runoff on the Republican side of the Senate race, and it may tell us something about Tallarico's efforts to court black voters following his primary win over U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett. J. David Goodman has been looking into all of this for the New York Times. David, welcome back to the Texas Standard.
Oh, thanks for having me.
For locals who happened to be grabbing tacos yesterday, this must have been quite a surprise. Or was this really a carefully choreographed photo op?
It was a mix of both. Obviously, there's a lot of security that goes into any appearance by the former president, but there were also a lot of patrons getting their lunch tacos who really had no idea what was happening, and were even a little frustrated by the fact that they had a tray full of food and they couldn't walk through certain areas or were blocked from getting through easily because Secret Service was starting to set up in anticipation. And so folks knew something was about to happen, but they weren't really certain, those who were just getting their food, until the former president, until Obama stepped out of the vehicle in front, and then they were gasped and people took out their phones and got very excited. It was mostly supporters of former President Obama at the restaurant yesterday.
Well, I mentioned Obama didn't formally endorse Tallarico or Hinojosa. I mean, maybe that wasn't necessary, or was it weird that he didn't say that? I mean, in political terms, what do you think this visit actually delivers for a candidate in Texas?
Well, what it seemed to be was a chance for the former president to elevate a couple of candidates who are seen as rising stars in the party, or at least among Democrats, people that the party hopes have a chance of actually flipping a state like Texas. And so what President Obama brings to a moment like this is just attention. He can get a whole lot of eyeballs on these two candidates and really associate himself with them. And that's what he did yesterday. He talked about them. He went around to each table with Gina Hinojosa and with James Tallarico and talked to, made small talk with the patrons, but also said, here's the future governor and future senator of Texas. And so that was really the importance of this, was to have, for James Tallarico, who's looking to, pierce this sort of red wall that's been in the Senate for decades now, it was a chance for him to be seen next to the president and really try and get some of that reflected glory, really. And for the most part, he stood back and everyone was excited to see the former president. And there's James Tallarico also, and there's also Gina Hinojosa. But it was mostly about Obama.
You mentioned, I think, Tallarico even was behind the camera a couple of times, taking pictures of Obama with taco people eating tacos.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he would grab the cell phone from folks and take the selfie because there weren't as many people asking for him to be in the photo as there were asking for Obama.
Well, you pointed out, and you were getting to this point in your previous answer about Obama himself didn't actually ever win Texas. So what does that mean meaningfully in a state that remains really reliably Republican?
Well, I don't think, obviously Obama did not carry the state of Texas anytime he ran, but what his presence and his sort of attention here in the race does is try and excite Democrats. And that's what James Talarico and Jeannie Hinojosa are going to need in November. They're going to need voters, and especially black voters in Texas, to come to the polls. And that's something that, especially in the Senate race, is a bit of a question because of some of the contentious campaigning that happened towards the end of the race between James Talarico and Representative Jasmine Crockett. So having Obama there, while that was not the goal of his visit, the goal, at least according to the folks I talked to, was to try and elevate these two young candidates, and they were connecting it to an appearance by Obama with Zohran Mamdani a few weeks ago. That was kind of what Obama was trying to do, but for James Talarico, it had the added benefit of him being seen next to this very popular first black president of the country, and so hopefully that will energize Democrats and get more folks out to the polls, which is what they're going to need if they have any hope of winning in November.
Now, is there a risk, though? Talarico has been really trying to position himself as someone who can appeal across the aisle. Is there a risk of appearing too progressive at some point, or is this just an effort to build a bigger tent right now?
I think that is a risk, and it's something that his consultants are calculating in terms of which national Democrats would he want to have near him appear with. Obviously, President Obama is someone who remains quite popular, although he's disliked by many Republicans. There's others, I think, that would be less helpful to James Talarico in Texas. But obviously, the National Party is always something that Texas candidates are trying to distance themselves from, and so there is that risk, like you're pointing out. But I think with a person like President Obama, there just isn't as much risk there as there might be with a more polarizing figure.
I guess taking a step and looking back at the Republican primary, how much does this Senate race and Talarico's chances have to do with how that Republican primary turns out?
I think a lot. I mean, there's obviously there's polling that the Talarico campaign has pointed to that show him winning even if John Cornyn wins that race. But I think they're hoping or they think they have a better shot at least against Attorney General Ken Paxton, just given his history of corruption allegations and the divorce that he's going through. He's a much more for Republicans, he's a more challenging candidate to get behind. That's why we have this very divisive primary happening right now. And John Cornyn is someone that doesn't really anger Democrats in the same way that Attorney General Ken Paxton does. So he's not as motivating to the base. And so I think they're looking at that race and kind of crossing their fingers that Ken Paxton prevails. But I think they think they can win either way. Although we'll see. No one's done it in more than 30 years as a Democrat.
I guess let's just examine the fact that, former President Obama showed up in Texas in the first place. I mean, is that a sign that the map is shifting or that national Democrats are testing the waters in Texas without real expectations even of flipping the state?
I think it speaks to the way Democrats are really looking around and thinking and realizing they need to start winning in some of these red states. And Texas is a state that, has been reliably Republican for a generation. But also, there are these major cities, and there's been this hope among Democrats that it is flippable. And it might not be this year, but it might be in the future. And so I think it does speak to the way Democrats are realizing that their long-term ambitions really do have to run through some of these red states. And Texas is probably, it's a huge prize. And if we were ever to flip, it would be a major reshuffling of the political map in the nation. And so there's always this hope, especially early on right now when sort of hopes run high, that it might be possible this year.
J. David Goodman is Texas Bureau Chief for the New York Times. David, thanks again.
Thank you.
Houston's FIFA World Cup host committee is preparing to install thousands of square feet of grass at NRG Stadium. Next month, some of the most elite athletes in the world will run, slide, kick, flop, and stomp on that grass, which has been growing for more than a year in Colorado. Taking care of the field will be one of the central features of Houston's hosting responsibilities. Houston Public Media's Michael Adkisson explains.
It is a gardening endeavor of Herculean levels. This grass has been growing for more than a year, 1,000 miles away from Houston.
It's been a comprehensive effort with all the cities involved.
Dan Bergstrom is in charge of growing the grass.
Working together over many meetings over multiple years at different universities to try to do all we can to deliver consistent surfaces across this tournament.
The grass, called a pitch in soccer, is essential to each World Cup match. Every host city has been tasked by FIFA with cultivating and installing a high-caliber pitch for the tournament. Bergstrom's vision for the pitch was a major factor in why FIFA selected Houston as a host city, according to his colleagues. Here's John Coppins, Vice President of Operations for the host committee.
It was his system and plan, with input from others, that convinced FIFA that we could do this and ultimately be a host city.
Years of preparation led to this. Now, the host committee will begin the process of installing that pitch. The grass took about 15 months to grow on a farm near Denver, Colorado. It's sod on plastic, meaning the grass was grown into plastic sheets that can be rolled up and shipped across the country. But it's much more complicated than your typical landscaping project.
The rolls come, 38 to 42 inches wide and 40 to 50 feet long. Each roll weighs about 1,800 to 2,000 pounds.
The grass is then shipped by refrigerated truck here to Houston. A specialized machine will unroll the plastic sheets of sod. Then a stitching machine will run polypropylene fibers throughout the grass, giving the pitch extra durability. Several grow lights and fans shipped in from the Netherlands will act as an artificial sun to keep the grass alive.
And so there was a whole side project over the past 2 years, to figure out the power for all these lights and fans and get that power installed in the stadium too.
A crew of 8 full-time workers will tend to the grass every day until the end of the tournament. Bergstrom says it's a type of grass not cultivated to survive in Houston's miserably hot and humid July weather.
It's a grass that likes cold overnights, and that does not happen in Houston in July.
After the final match in Houston on July 4th, the grass will be removed from the stadium and will die soon after. John Coppins is tongue-in-cheek at the thought.
Its tour of duty is 7 World Cup matches, and like a good Triple Crown racehorse, it'll be sent out to pasture.
Years of work for the host committee withering away in the Houston heat. But Bergstrom and Coppins aren't somber at the thought. Instead, it will be a celebration of their hard work before moving on to greener pastures. I'm Michael Atkinson in Houston.
Still ahead on The Standard, the cost of childcare and the county in Texas that's been trying a different way to bring it down. You can find more coverage of Texas each Wednesday in your inbox. Subscribe to our newsletter now at texasstandard.org.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Realtors, providing representation at every stage of the home ownership journey, helping clients understand their options and manage complex transaction details. Info at texasrealestate.com. Support for Texas Standard comes from the online UT High School, offering a full-time diploma program for remote, asynchronous learners throughout Texas. More at highschool.utexas.edu/tuition-free.
This is the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. The cost of childcare is going up nationwide. In many states, it's actually outpacing the price of in-state college tuition. Across the country, local governments are trying to figure out how to make it cheaper. New York City recently launched a free daycare program for the children of city workers, and voters in Larimer County, Colorado, approved a sales tax increase to address its preschool and daycare shortage. Here in Texas, Travis County is ahead of the game. A locally funded program for affordable childcare has been in the works for over a year. KUT's Katie McAfee talked with parents and childcare providers to see how it's going.
It's a busy day at Happy Hearts Bilingual Learning Center in South Austin. A group of toddlers is hard at work cutting out pictures of various animals for an assignment. Some students are completely absorbed.
I'm cutting the paper for my butterfly.
Others are a little preoccupied.
So what are you working on over here?
My mommy and daddy leave me here, and then my dad just dropped me off.
All of them are learning. The goal is that by next year, this group will be able to recognize the alphabet and numbers up to 20. More importantly, they'll pick up on social skills that will help them when kindergarten rolls around. But getting a quality early childhood education like this is expensive. In Austin, it costs more than anywhere else in the state, $13,000 a year, according to the most recent data. Price has been a barrier for thousands of families, but the tide might be starting to turn. This year, Happy Hearts enrolled 9 kids in its program whose families previously wouldn't have been able to afford childcare.
Maybe the number 9 doesn't seem like a huge number, but when you think about 9 parents that were not able to afford childcare, that may not have been able to go back to the workforce, it's very significant.
Mari Sairo is the director at Happy Hearts. She helped get those 9 kids enrolled. And she's made other changes. Starting wages for new staff are a little higher. Teachers are getting more paid time off.
And we were able to hire a curriculum specialist. In past years, we would have never been able to hire a curriculum specialist because our budget didn't allow for that.
Her budget is a little bigger this year thanks to Raising Travis County. It's a program you might remember voting on in 2024. Childcare advocates at the time were ringing alarm bells that the state's system for affordable childcare wasn't working. That program only had enough funding for families with the absolute highest need, like kids who are unhoused or kids with disabilities. Thousands of kids who don't fall into one of those priority groups were stuck on a wait list that took 2 years on average to move through. And the subsidies that were provided didn't cover the full cost of childcare. Daycare centers were often left to pick up the difference. So Travis County decided to try something that had never been done before in Texas, something very few places in the country have even tried.
The only way that we're going to get the community that we deserve is if we decide what's most important to us and build it ourselves.
That was Travis County Commissioner Jeff Trevelyan in 2024 announcing a ballot measure asking voters to raise property taxes. The money would be used to create the county's own affordable childcare system, including giving childcare centers money to boost salaries.
Let's build something that our children and our grandchildren will be proud of when they talk about us. Thank you.
It passed with 60% of the vote, and Raising Travis County was born. One of the main elements of the program was getting affordable childcare for kids between the ages of 0 and 3. They signed a $17 million contract with the nonprofit Workforce Solutions to make it happen. But they didn't start from scratch. A few months ago, Workforce Solutions began making their way through the list of Travis County kids who were already waiting to receive a scholarship through the state. 6,000 kids were on the list. Some of them have been waiting since 2022.
You can only imagine being on a wait list since 2022. It's 2026 when we started in January, finally being able to do the outreaches, right? Just letting families know, hey, do you remember who we are? Do you remember when you signed up for this?
Marjorie Vesse Villafranco has been managing the list for Workforce Solutions. She says some people don't remember signing up. Others do, but they're no longer eligible. Families need to meet certain income and employment requirements to qualify, and they have to live in Travis County.
As we hear from some of them, we are also hearing they couldn't stay in Travis County. And we wonder, right, could this have been one of the reasons that could have helped them keep that stability for their family?
For many parents, funding came too late. That's been the case for most families for decades. Even the longest tenured staff at Workforce Solutions say they can't remember a time there wasn't a wait list. But for some families that are just now planting roots, Raising Travis County is coming in right on time. Families like Grace Todd's. I met Todd at a coffee shop on UT's campus when she was in between classes. She's a busy 26-year-old, working on getting her PhD in French, a single mom bringing up her bébé Clementine.
She's crazy, but she's just like me.
Todd found out she was pregnant during her senior year at Texas State University. At the time, she was focused on finishing her last semester and applying for the PhD program. She didn't worry about daycare until she realized her grad school classes would all be in person, and she would have to make ends meet with a $35,000 annual stipend.
It felt very daunting. I also think I didn't have a realistic picture of how much it would cost. I definitely thought it would be cheaper than it is.
Todd got on the state's list for an affordable childcare scholarship in April 2023. Clementine was less than a year old. While she waited to hear back, she sent Clementine to UT's Child Development Center. She was paying $940 a month, and that was the cheapest option.
And I've had to pick up an extra job to make ends meet of doing extra online grading for 10 more hours a week. And with that, I still haven't really been able to save at all.
Every few months, she called to see if there was any progress on Clementine's scholarship. She heard the same thing every time.
They would say, we don't have any funding right now, so, next time they give us money, we'll let you know. But right now, there's nothing.
Clementine's almost 4 now, but last month, she finally got the call. Clementine got a scholarship to go to the same daycare she's in now, but for $150 a month.
Which is insane. I feel like I'm getting an $800 a month raise, even though it's really just $800 that I'm going to be able to save.
Todd says the scholarship will bring her out of the red financially for the first time since she's been in grad school. And as long as she stays eligible, she can keep the scholarship until Clementine is 13. Workforce Solutions has been reaching out to hundreds of parents over the past few months with the same good news. Almost 300 kids have been placed in daycare through Raising Travis County. Their goal is to get to 1,000 by October. So some parents struggling to afford childcare no longer have to put their lives on hold for years. They can go back to school or work while daycare centers like Happy Hearts prepare the next generation. Maybe some of them will grow up to be public radio reporters.
Wow, who's that?
This is a recorder.
Hello, 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 hello.
I'm Katie McAfee in Austin.
Well, the San Antonio Spurs are now up 3-2 over Minnesota in the Western Conference semifinals of the NBA playoffs. Star Victor Wembanyama was back on the court after being ejected early in Game 4 for a flagrant 2 foul. He scored 27 of the team's 126 points. The Spurs still need to beat the Timberwolves one more time to clinch the series, which so far has been going back and forth. The next game is Friday in Minneapolis. The winner will face the defending champs, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who swept the Lakers this week. There's more Texas Standard just ahead. Stay with us.
Support for Texas Standard comes from the beef-loving Texans at the Texas Beef Council, a community passionate about what they eat, where it comes from, and how it's prepared. Recipes and meal ideas at beeflovingtexans.com. Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider that's been caring for hardworking Texans for over 30 years. More at texasmutual.com/expert partner.
From the Texas Newsroom, I'm Matt Harrop. Mexican authorities confirmed 3 of the 6 immigrants found dead inside of an overheated rail car near Laredo were Mexican nationals. Stefania Corpi reports.
The Mexican consulate in Laredo said it activated its protection protocols and is assisting families, including with the possible repatriation of remains. Authorities said the victims included 5 men and a 29-year-old woman from Mexico. The remaining victims are still being identified. Hypothermia was cited as a likely cause of death since temperatures in Laredo reached 97 degrees Sunday. The deaths occurred in one of the country's busiest trade corridors. Port Laredo accounted for 62% of Texas land port trade in 2024, totaling nearly $340 billion. I'm Stefania Corpi in Mexico City.
Texas data shows more than 40,000 pregnant people waited more than a month for the state to process their Medicaid application. Diana Forrester is the director of health policy at Texans Care for Children. That's the organization that requested the data from the states.
That delay, combined with, other steps in the process, make it really difficult to start prenatal care in the first trimester, which we know is really important.
Forrester says once enrolled in Medicaid, pregnant people can also have issues getting an appointment quickly, which acts as another significant barrier to care. The state says it is working as quickly as possible to issue benefits to eligible Texans. The Corpus Christi City Council did not vote on the plan to restrict water usage because of dwindling reserves during yesterday's meeting, instead opting to do that next week. At issue is the 25% reduction in water usage and whether that will be enforced uniformly for both industry and residential customers. A new Garland business may have to cover up a mural of the Virgin of Guadalupe weeks after it was painted. Our Priscilla Rice has that story.
La Esquinita Panaderia y Taqueria owner Jamie Zamora says she was surprised when her landlord told her the mural would need to be removed. She says she and her husband submitted the art rendering to the building's manager for approval months before the restaurant opened last week. Zamora says the Virgin of Guadalupe, known as the patron saint of the Americas, has deep cultural meaning.
A staple of of safety and a community, and I feel like that shouldn't be taken away from us.
She is waiting for an update from the landlord on what the next steps are for the mural. KERA reached out to the building's owners, but did not hear back. I'm Priscilla Rice in Dallas.
And U.S. Highway 287 will have a new name if Texas Senator John Cornyn has his way. He filed a bill to rename it to Highway 47 in honor of President Trump. The highway runs through Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. I'm Matt Harab in the Texas Newsroom.
Support for these Texas headlines comes from the beef-loving Texans at the Texas Beef Council, a community passionate about what they eat, where it comes from, and how it's prepared. Recipes and meal ideas at beeflovingtexans.com.
33 minutes past the hour, Texas Standard Time. I'm David Brown. Texas's public school enrollment dropped by more than 76,000 students at the beginning of this current school year. That's according to a new report by the education advocacy group Texas 2036. So what does 76,000 actually mean? Well, think about a couple of things here. We've seen huge population growth in Texas, and yet, at the same time, this decline represents the largest single-year drop in public school enrollment in modern Texas history, not counting the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us now to tell us more, Silas Allen, who covers education for the Dallas Morning News. Silas, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Do we know what caused this drop? Does the report get into any of those sorts of details?
Yeah, it was really a combination of things. And this is something school districts have been worrying about for a few years now. One of the main factors is there are just fewer kids. The birth rate both in Texas and nationwide has been declining for a few years now, and that just means there are fewer kids to be going into school. But also, since the pandemic, we've just seen families choosing other options for educating their students. When students were at home and they were working from home and parents were working remotely, parents started to see kind of other options that their kids might have. Since the pandemic, we've seen a pretty sharp uptick in the number of students in homeschooling, for example.
I totally get that, but I want to get back to this population drop overall, the backdrop that you were talking about earlier. Does that mean that we're seeing a lot fewer students entering first, second, third grades? Or, I wonder how the demographics break down among different groups or cohorts of students.
Yeah, exactly. We are seeing generally our kindergarten classes are smaller than our high school senior classes. So there are not as many students coming in every year as there are students graduating.
What does this mean for school funding? Given that funding is tied to attendance, I assume this is a rather large concern for a lot of public school districts in Texas.
Right. This definitely makes budgets more complicated for school districts. And like I said, this is something districts have already been kind of worried about for years and have been struggling about for years. Lots of school districts across the state are already looking at cutting staff or closing schools to save on costs. Here in North Texas, Fort Worth ISD is looking at closing 18 campuses over the next few years. And in Central Texas, Austin ISD is closing 10 campuses just this summer.
Yeah, there are a lot of school districts that are facing budget shortfalls, and it's just they don't see any way to keep some of these facilities open or to serve students as they have in the past. What about the future? Is there any light at the end of this tunnel from what you can tell?
It sounds like the enrollment drops are actually just going to get more dire over the next few years. This report was timed to release ahead of an interim hearing of the Texas House Committee on Public Education. And during that meeting, a school demographics consultant said next year we could be looking at a much bigger decline, maybe around 120,000 students. There are a few different factors there. One of them is that, as we talked about, the kindergarten classes keep getting smaller and smaller. So they're not large enough to replace the students who are graduating every year. And that situation is just going to keep exacerbating itself. But also next year, we have the first year of the Texas Education Freedom Account program.
Those are what some people call vouchers. Is that right?
Yes. There have been close to 100,000 students who were awarded funding through that program for next school year. Most of those students are not in public school now, so they wouldn't be leaving the public school system. But a good chunk of them are enrolled in their local ISDs or charter schools. So that could still represent tens of thousands of students leaving the public school system next year.
I think there are a lot of educators, certainly that I've spoken with, who sort of feel like they are caught between that proverbial rock and a hard place, the demographics on the one hand, but also lawmakers giving the public and encouraging them to explore options beyond public schools. And yet you have a large number of students for whom there is no other option but the local public school district. Is that what you're hearing?
That's definitely something we've heard, particularly from, more rural parts of the state where there aren't, maybe there's a small parochial school, but it doesn't have the capacity to take large numbers of kids from the public school system. But here, in major urban areas, we've seen private schools really kind of throw out a shingle, saying they're ready and willing to accept new students who are coming in using school voucher money.
Silas, this may be looking too far in the future, but is Texas on its way to having to rethink how we fund public education with these demographic changes, do you think?
There was some discussion earlier this week in a Texas House Committee on Public Education hearing about the possibility of changing the way schools are funded from average daily attendance to something else. Texas is really only one of about 6 states that does fund schools that way. Mm-hmm. So far, I haven't seen any momentum in the legislature toward making any kind of change like that.
Silas Allen covers education for the Dallas Morning News, and we're going to link to his excellent reporting over at texasstandard.org. Silas, thanks so much.
Thanks, David.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Casa. For a child in foster care, small moments today can have a big impact tomorrow. More on how lending time and support can help make a difference at becomeacasa.org.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. It's long been considered a core principle of American journalism that the news is not about reporters' feelings or reactions to the news. It's about the audience, helping them understand what happened, why it matters, what's verifiably true. But there are times when a story is so big that a reporter finds herself or himself at the heart of it, and that firsthand perspective becomes the best, if not the only, way to convey more than just the facts of what happened, but the human reality of living through it. That's where Texas Monthly senior editor Aaron Parsley found himself on the morning of July 4th and in the days and weeks that followed, living through it and writing about it. His harrowing and deeply moving first-person account of last summer's Central Texas floods, "The River House Broke, We Rushed in the River," was published in the August 2025 issue of Texas Monthly. And last week, Parsley got word his story won the 2026 Pulitzer Prize for feature writing. It's the first Pulitzer in the history of the magazine. Aaron, congratulations on the award, and thanks so much for joining us on the Texas Standard.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to begin by talking about the title of the story. It's a quote from your niece, from 4-year-old Rosemary. "The river house broke, we rushed in the river." And I think it's made all the more devastating because it's so simple and childlike. What made you decide this story had to be told in the first person?
Well, this story, I decided to write it because I had a message that I wanted to convey about my sister and what she was able to do the morning of the flood. We were dealing with an unthinkable tragedy, and in my mind, I saw her as a hero of the day. And so I wanted to just let the world know, that she did everything that she could, that she saved her daughter, she saved herself, and that we were really grateful for that. This was an effort to give testimony, to say what I saw, what I felt, what I heard, and also what my family witnessed. So that's why this story is written the way it is.
I don't want to go too far without mentioning Clay, your 20-month-old nephew who was killed when the house was swept away. But Clay's present throughout this piece. I mean, you pick up on Clay's personality, laughing during hide and seek and, all that sort of thing. And I think a lot of us would have found it really hard to write about this, much less report on what happened. And I felt like you were trying to say something not just about Clay, but about others who died in the flooding that weekend.
Certainly. I mean, this is an event that we were not expecting. And, we went to bed the night of July 3rd, a happy family, and Clay was at the center of all of that. And he was a wonderful little boy. He had lived a life of happiness. He was healthy. We had a good time with him. We got in the river with him the day before. And losing him is incredibly hard. And I know that we're not the only family that lost people. I can speak to the love that we have for him, and I'm sure that many others who are suffering with grief and loss understand that. And he's on our mind. We miss him, and we also are grappling with the loss of what he would become, who he would become. So that's ongoing for sure.
Well, one of the thoughts that came to mind, at one point you write that you considered the possibility of death. And I'm wondering if you understand that moment any differently now than you did when you were, living it or writing it out.
What I understand about that moment is that for some reason I was in a lot of acceptance about what was about to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen. I certainly know that death was a possibility for me. I remember thinking that, this is how I'm going to die. And, I'm going to die at 48 years old in a flood. And I just felt sort of accepting of that, if that was the outcome. So do I feel different about it now? I don't necessarily feel different about it now. I still think it could have gone either way. I don't think that there's anything that I did that others who lost their lives didn't do. I think it was absolutely a roll of the dice. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for my family members who survived. But yeah, it was a turning point in my life, I think. And, I've spent the last year, almost nearly a year, remembering that, what it felt like, trying to understand it. And I think that's just an ongoing process.
Well, having lived through all of this, how did it feel to hear that you had won a Pulitzer Prize for your reporting on what happened?
It was a shock. I was really proud and grateful. But of course, it's mixed feelings, It really matters to me how my family feels about all of this attention. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to tell my story. I'm proud to be a part of Texas Monthly. And, it was gratifying to be recognized for a story that honored my nephew Clay and our family's strength. I think it took me a while to separate this event and the work that I've done about this event. And I'm extremely proud of the work that I've done about this event. And so it felt wonderful to be recognized by the Pulitzer board.
I'm sure you've been getting all sorts of calls and requests to talk about your story. Is it hard to keep reliving these moments? Did you feel like, in a way, after almost a year, that you had been able to sort of move past it, in a sense?
Actually, no. I've been working on a podcast about the flood, and I've written another story that'll be on the cover of Texas Monthly's June issue. So coming up, it just published last week. And so I've been sort of immersed in these feelings and these ideas and the thoughts that come from this experience. And it's not easy. It can be emotionally draining, but I feel like I don't really have a choice. Like this is the stuff that would be on my mind regardless. And I think being able to do work with it is a privilege. And so, yeah, it can be hard in any given moment, but it's sort of what I choose to do. And, I'm looking to understand how I feel, what I believe in, and that happens through talking to other people and through writing and these conversations and making connections. So it's been, like I said, it's been a really incredible privilege to be able to explore all of that within myself and with other people.
Aaron Parsley is the Pulitzer Prize-winning writer and senior editor at Texas Monthly, whose story, "The River House Broke, We Rushed in the River," just received extraordinary acknowledgement from the Pulitzer Prize Committee. We're going to have a link to his award-winning account of the floods at our own website, texasstandard.org, as well as an extended version of our conversation. And Aaron mentioned the news story, the newest story, and we encourage you to check that out. The title, The Guadalupe Swept Us Away. This is the story of all that came after. And we should mention the upcoming podcast called Where the River Took Us. It's out on May 26th, but you can stream a trailer right now on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Aaron, thanks again for joining us. And again, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Hildebrand MBA at UT Austin's McCombs School of Business, presenting MBA programs, developing strategic leadership skills for public and private sectors, offering multiple formats serving Texas professionals. More at texasmba.com.
This is the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. When Dell and ExxonMobil announced plans to move their legal corporate homes to Texas, state officials crowed. Governor Abbott said the moves represent a vote of support for Texas's business-friendly policies. And even though the two companies have long maintained headquarters and operations in Texas, they and other firms bringing their legal domiciles here are poised to bring more economic opportunity with them, at least according to boosters. The Texas Tribune's Paul Cobbler has been looking into what reincorporation in Texas has actually meant for the state's economy. Paul, welcome back to the Texas Standard.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Dell, which is based in Round Rock, announced last week it would move its legal domicile to Texas from Delaware, following SpaceX, Coinbase, ExxonMobil, and others. Why were these companies located in states like Delaware in the first place?
Yeah, it's kind of a quirk of our national corporate landscape where corporations are able to put their legal homes in a state that doesn't necessarily have their physical homes. As I'm sure you know, in Round Rock is host to Dell. ExxonMobil is in Spring physically, but they seek to be in these other states largely just for friendly corporate governance rules, for friendly tax reasons.
So has Texas made any specific changes to its laws that are bringing these companies here now?
Yeah, so this all really started in the last 3 years or so, going back to the 2023 session. The legislature then created the Texas Business Courts, which are these specialized courts similar to ones that Delaware has, where there are no juries. There are judges that are trained, that are experts in corporate law, and they rule on business disputes. Corporations basically enjoy that because they can know that they have an expert hearing their case rather than sort of the general public that can be a little bit more hard to know what to expect from. And then in the 2025 session, there were further revisions made to those and further revisions made to our codes and state statutes that basically created a more kind of business-friendly set of rules for a lot of these corporations that have been attractive to them.
So on the booster side, what impact do advocates and the companies themselves say moving their legal headquarters to Texas might have?
It's basically, it's all of those sort of listed reasons. There has been a bit of frustration with Delaware and a couple other northeastern states that are home to a lot of corporate legal headquarters, where this goes back to actually Elon Musk in 2024 had a pay package that was blocked by the Delaware Chancery Courts. And he moved several of his companies, and that kind of started this trend of other corporations sort of thinking that the courts in Delaware have been doing rulings that they are not necessarily happy with, that they see as unfriendly to management. So that has kind of started this sort of rolling trend of more and more corporations doing this, of seeing a friendlier legal landscape, a friendlier tax landscape that makes it worth their while.
Well, economically, this is a big deal in Delaware, where taxes and legal filings make up, you reported, 20 to 25% of its entire state budget. But in Texas, is it likely to have a big economic boost?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in Delaware, this is really all they do. It's a state of about 1 million people. They have a very large legal ecosystem. They have a very large financial ecosystem that is built around their expertise in having these corporate entities exist there. And in Texas, we have a huge state with a huge economy. In terms of our budget, we collect franchise taxes, but we also collect them from companies that exist here physically that make up about $5 billion in the state budget, which is nothing to sniff at. But for companies like ExxonMobil and Dell, we're already collecting those. And the legal filing fees that we get just from companies needing to, submit things to the Secretary of State to, show that they exist here. They really are, we're talking millions of dollars rather than billions.
Okay. Well, this comes as we've been talking a lot about Y'all Street and Texas's move really into the financial services industry in the state. Could you give us a little context? I mean, does this give Texas a bigger argument in its place in the world as far as financial services go?
Absolutely, it does. This is kind of, when we talk about Delaware and this large financial and legal ecosystem, these white-collar jobs that they have in Delaware that have been built up around this system, Y'all Street coming in is part of that. That is, we have more corporations that exist here. They need financial services. They need to get bank loans. They also need legal services, and they need lawyers that understand how our state laws work. And so this does provide a boost to those entities. And I think that's a big reason why we have seen the growth of Y'all Street is simply just the number of large corporations that are having a growing presence in the state of Texas.
Paul Cobbler is the Texas Tribune's economy and industry reporter. We'll share his reporting at texasstandard.org. Paul, thanks so much.
Thank y'all.
And you're listening to the Texas Standard. Audience and engagement editor Wells Dunbar is in the studio with me. Hey, Wells.
Hey, Laura. Great to be with you. Well, as we heard about on the show today, Texas public schools saw one of the biggest enrollment drops in modern history. Texas public school enrollment falling by more than 76,000 students this school year, according to that new report we were talking about. One of the sharpest declines outside the pandemic era. And it's a big story underpinning a big issue, education. And as the school year comes to a close, we're asking folks what they've learned about education in Texas, and we want to hear from them. Best way to do that, go to texasstandard.org/talk and leave us a voicemail message that we can use on the air this Friday. We want to hear from you, whether you're a parent, an educator, a student, administrator, whoever. If you just got thoughts about education in Texas, we want to hear them because there is a lot of ground to cover. On our Facebook page, Jennifer Bristol, she points to one sort of a perennial topic of discussion when it comes to education. She says that the Robin Hood tax is no longer effective, and hugely controversial aspect of education, the so-called recapture system, where these what they refer to as property-rich school districts, that money goes into a big state fund and is dispersed statewide. A nice thing in theory, but I'm reminded here, we're broadcasting out of Austin. Right. Which has seen property taxes soar over the last couple of decades. Yet Austin ISD in a $181 million deficit projected for this upcoming school year. So that story really indicative of the problems surrounding recapture, or so-called Robin Hood. Michael Menard says this. He asked the same question of the kids in his neighborhood, and they rarely seem to be excited about learning anything. It seems, referring there to this question of, what did you learn this year? And it's one thing when you're in the trenches there in school, as the parent of a 9 and a 12-year-old, sometimes it's hard to get more than those, single syllable answers out of them when it comes to, how school went today.
My kindergartner was like, what are you most proud of? I don't understand the question. You are 6. I'll give you that. Yeah.
But so maybe they have an excuse, but no one else does. Go to texasstandard.org/talk and just let loose, man, because there is a lot to talk about, from funding to state intervention. So much. Again, texasstandard.org/talk. We'd love to hear your thoughts on education.
Yeah. Are you a teacher? Are you a parent? Maybe you're just a taxpayer or a former public school kid. We want to hear from you.
Philanthropic support for Texas Standard comes from Casey and Scott O'Hare, the Winkler Family Foundation, Lynn Dobson and Greg Wooldridge, Adrian Killam, the George Huntington Family, and St. David's Foundation. Additionally, Texas Mutual Insurance Company is a founding sponsor of Texas Standard.